In the 35th Jubilee, during the third week and the first year, Roy chose a wife for himself, a woman named Orah, the daughter of Ar, son of Kesed. In the 7th year of that same week, she bore him a son. With great thought, he named the boy Seroh, for he saw the world around him plunging deeper into wickedness and chaos. In those days, the sons of Noah turned against one another. Violence and greed ruled their hearts as they captured and slaughtered each other without mercy. The sacredness of life was abandoned, and they shed human blood with impunity. Men defiled themselves by consuming blood, and their ambitions led them to construct mighty cities, fortified walls, and towering structures. Pride swelled among individuals as they exalted themselves above their peers, founding the first kingdoms and waging wars, people against people, city against city, and nation against nation. Evil spread like a plague as they forged weapons of war and taught their sons the ways of battle. Cities were conquered, and the defeated were sold as male and female slaves. During this era of lawlessness, son of Kesed, built a city in the land of the Chaldees. He named it Ara, after himself and his father, a monument to his pride. But the people fell further into corruption, crafting molten images and graven idols to worship. Each one bowed to the lifeless gods they had fashioned with their own hands. Unclean spirits, malicious and cunning, led them astray, urging them into ever deeper transgressions and defilements. Mastemah, the Prince of Darkness, intensified his efforts to corrupt mankind. He unleashed a host of spirits under his command to sow sin and destruction across the earth. These wicked beings delighted in bloodshed, spreading deceit and leading humanity to commit every imaginable transgression. Seeing the depravity of his age, Ru named his son Serug, for the hearts of all had turned toward sin and rebellion. Serug grew up and made his home in Ur of the Chaldees, near the household of his wife's maternal grandfather. Like the others, he succumbed to the idolatry of his time. In the 36th Jubilee, during the 5th week and the first year, he took a wife named Melka, the daughter of Karber, his father's brother's daughter. She bore him a son, Nahor, in the first year of that week. Nahor grew and remained in Ur of the Chaldees, where his father taught him the secret knowledge of the Chaldeans, the arts of divination, and the reading of heavenly signs. In the 37th Jubilee, during the 6th week and the first year, Nahor married a woman named Ijaskah, the daughter of Nestag of the Chaldees. In the 7th year of that week, she bore him a son, Terah. Yet even in Terah's infancy, Mastemah's wickedness persisted. The Prince of Darkness sent flocks of ravens and other birds to devour the seeds sown in the fields, stripping the earth of its fruitfulness. Before the farmers could plow the seed into the ground, the birds descended and snatched it away. Because of this devastation, Nahor named his son Terah, meaning destitution, for the birds left the people impoverished and desperate. The land grew barren in those days, and the toil of men became fruitless. The birds consumed not only the seeds in the fields, but also the fruit from the trees. Though the people labored tirelessly, only a small portion of their harvest could be salvaged, and they struggled to survive. By the 39th Jubilee, during the 2nd week and the first year, Terah took a wife named Edna, the daughter of Abram, who was the daughter of his father's sister. In the 7th year of that week, she bore him a son. Terah named the boy Abram in honor of his wife's father, who had passed away before his daughter conceived. As Abram grew, his understanding of the world deepened, and he began to perceive the grievous errors of humanity. Everywhere he looked, people had turned from righteousness, chasing after graven idols and indulging in unclean practices. When he was just 2 weeks of years old, his father Terah taught him the art of writing. Yet even then, Abram's spirit resisted the idolatry surrounding him. By the weight of conviction, he chose to separate himself from his father's ways. determined that he would not bow to lifeless idols. In those early days of awakening, Abram prayed fervently to the Creator of all things. "O great Maker of heaven and earth," he pleaded, "rescue me from the errors of mankind. Let my soul not be ensnared by their vile practices. May my portion be set apart, far from the stain of uncleanness." When the time came for sowing seeds in the fields, Abram, then a lad of 14, went out with others to protect the crops from the relentless ravens. The skies darkened with a vast cloud of the birds, ready to devour the precious seed. But Abram, undaunted, ran toward them and cried out, "Turn back, you devourers of the earth. Descend not upon this land, but return to the place from which you came." At his words, the ravens turned away. Again and again, 70 times that day, Abram confronted them, and not a single raven dared settle upon the land. Those who witnessed this marvel stood in awe. Word spread across the Chaldean lands, and Abram's name became revered. That year, farmers from all around came to seek his guidance. He walked with them to the fields and stayed until the sowing season ended. To their astonishment, the land yielded a bountiful harvest, enough to feed them all and leave them satisfied. In the first year of the 5th week, Abram's ingenuity shone brightly. He taught craftsmen who worked with wood to fashion a new tool, an implement attached above the plow. This vessel would carry the seed, dropping it directly into the furrow as the plow turned the earth. No longer would the farmers fear the ravens, for the seed was hidden away, safe from their beaks. Abram's design spread across the land, and every plow was equipped with this innovation, ensuring a secure harvest. By the 6th week in the 7th year, Abram confronted his father, his heart aflame with righteous indignation. "Father," he called, and Terah answered, "Here I am, my son." Abram's voice trembled with both reverence and passion as he spoke. "What gain have we from these idols you worship? What profit comes from bowing before lifeless forms? They are but empty figures without spirit or life, leading hearts astray. Do not worship them. Turn instead to the God of heaven, who sends the rain and dew upon the earth, who governs all things and spoke creation into being. It is he who gives life to all. Why bow before what is fashioned by human hands? These idols are carried upon shoulders, yet they bring no aid to those who bear them. They are a shame to their makers and a snare to the hearts of worshippers. Worship them not." Terah sighed deeply and replied, "My son, I know what you say is true, but what am I to do? The people compel me to serve these gods. If I speak the truth, they will slay me, for their hearts cling to this false worship. Be silent, my son, lest they also kill you." Though Abram's words were filled with wisdom, they stirred anger in his brothers. They chastised him fiercely, and Abram chose to remain silent, biding his time. In the 40th Jubilee, during the 2nd week and the 7th year, Abram took a wife named Sarai, the daughter of his father. She became his beloved companion. His brother Haran also married, and in the 3rd year of the 3rd week, Haran's wife bore him a son, whom he named Lot. Nahor, their other brother, also took a wife, and their families grew. In the 60th year of Abram's life, a pivotal event unfolded. In the stillness of the night, Abram arose, his heart ablaze with zeal for the true God. With fire in his hands, he set alight the house of idols, consuming every image within. The flames raged, and no one in the household noticed until it was too late. The family awoke in alarm, rushing to save their gods from the inferno. Haran, desperate to preserve what he deemed sacred, threw himself into the blaze, but the fire overpowered him. He perished in the flames, and his death left a shadow over the house of Terah. Haran was laid to rest in Ur of the Chaldees, the city of his birth, and the idols he sought to protect were reduced to ashes. As the days passed, Terah resolved to leave Ur of the Chaldees. Taking his sons, he set his course toward the lands of Lebanon and Canaan. Yet along the way, he settled in the land of Haran, where Abram lived with him for 2 weeks of years. In the 6th week, during the 5th year, Abram, ever watchful and contemplative, sat alone one night beneath the heavens. It was the new moon of the 7th month, and he remained awake from evening until dawn, observing the stars. His heart sought to discern the character of the coming year, particularly the rains that would nourish the land. As the hours passed, a profound thought stirred within him. He murmured to himself, "Why do I seek the answers in the stars, the moon, and the sun? Are they not all held in the hands of the Lord? If it pleases him, he sends the rains to fall in their time, morning and evening, and if it does not, he withholds them. All creation lies under his sovereign will." Moved by this revelation, Abram knelt in prayer, pouring out his soul to the Creator. "O my God, God Most High, you alone are my Lord, and I have chosen you and your dominion over all else. You are the maker of all things. Every work of creation bears the mark of your hands. Deliver me, I pray, from the grasp of evil spirits who whisper corruption into the hearts of men. Do not let them lead me astray from you, my God. Establish me and my descendants in your ways forever, that we may never stray from your truth, from now until the end of time." As his heart wrestled with the path before him, he cried out again, "Should I return to Ur of the Chaldees, where men seek me, longing for my return? Or should I remain in this place? O Lord, guide me. Make my path clear and prosper the way of your servant, that I may walk in obedience and not in the deceit of my own heart." Having spoken and prayed, Abram fell silent. In the stillness of the night, the word of the Lord came to him through an angel, saying, "Arise, Abram, leave your country, your kindred, and your father's house, and journey to a land I will show you. There I will make of you a great and numerous nation. I will bless you and make your name great, and you will be a blessing to all the earth. Through you, all the families of the world will be blessed. I will bless those who bless you and curse those who curse you. Fear not, for I am your God, and I will remain so for you, your son, your son's son, and all your descendants for every generation to come." The Lord spoke again, declaring, "Open his mouth and ears, that he may hear my words and speak the language I shall reveal to him." Since the day of Babel's fall, the sacred tongue of creation had ceased among the children of men. By divine command, the angel opened Abram's ears, lips, and understanding, and he began to speak in the Hebrew tongue, the language of creation itself. Abram took the ancient books of his forefathers, written in Hebrew, and carefully transcribed them. For 6 rainy months he studied their wisdom, and the angel revealed to him all that had been hidden or unclear. In the 7th year of the 6th week, Abram approached his father and announced his decision. "Father," he said, "I must journey into the land of Canaan. I wish to see it and then return to you." Terah, though heavy-hearted, blessed him with these words, "Go in peace, my son. May the eternal God make your path straight. May the Lord walk with you, shielding you from every evil. May you find grace, mercy, and favor in the eyes of all who see you, and may no man have the power to harm you. Go in peace." Terah then added, "If you find a land that pleases your eyes and feels right to dwell in, return for me and take me with you. Take Lot, the son of your brother Haran, as your own son, that he may go with you. The Lord be with you. But leave Nahor with me until you return, and then we shall all go together as one." Abram departed from Haran, accompanied by Sarai, his beloved wife, and Lot, the son of his brother Haran. Together they journeyed toward the land of Canaan. Along the way, they passed through Asher and continued until they arrived at Shechem, where Abram chose to settle near a towering oak. As he gazed upon the land, its beauty overwhelmed him. From the entrance of Hamath to the towering oak, the land stretched before him, vibrant and lush. In that moment, the voice of the Lord came to Abram, declaring, "To you and your descendants, I will give this land." Overcome with awe and gratitude, Abram built an altar at that place. There he offered a burnt sacrifice to the Lord, who had revealed himself to him. From there, Abram moved to the mountains, pitching his tent between Bethel to the west and Ai to the east. Again he looked upon the land and marveled at its vastness and abundance. The vineyards flourished with grapes, while figs, pomegranates, and date palms grew in abundance. Oaks, terebinths, olive trees, and towering cedars adorned the landscape, and streams of water flowed freely from the mountains. Abram lifted his voice in praise, blessing the Lord who had brought him safely out of Ur of the Chaldees and into this promised land. In the first year of the 7th week, on the new moon of the first month, he built another altar atop the mountain. There he called upon the name of the Lord, proclaiming, "You, O eternal God, are my God." On that altar, Abram offered another burnt sacrifice, praying fervently that the Lord would remain with him and never abandon him for all the days of his life. From the mountains, Abram continued his journey southward, eventually arriving in Hebron, a newly built settlement. He stayed there for 2 years, then moved onward into the southern lands of Beloth. But during this time, famine spread across the land, forcing Abram to seek refuge in Egypt. In the 3rd year of the week, Abram arrived in Egypt and dwelt there for 5 years. It was during this time that Sarai, his wife, was taken from him by Pharaoh. Yet the Lord intervened mightily on Abram's behalf, striking Pharaoh and his household with great plagues because of Sarai. Abram's wealth grew exceedingly during this time. His flocks of sheep and herds of cattle multiplied. He gained many donkeys, horses, and camels, along with numerous servants and great treasures of silver and gold. Lot, too, became wealthy as a result of Abram's blessing. When Pharaoh returned Sarai to Abram, he sent them both away from Egypt with all their possessions. Abram retraced his steps, returning to the place where he had first pitched his tent between Bethel and Ai. There, at the altar he had built earlier, he knelt in thanksgiving and blessed the Lord who had brought him back in peace. In the 41st Jubilee, during the 3rd year of the 1st week, Abram returned to this place once more. He offered another burnt sacrifice on the altar, calling upon the name of the Lord and declaring, "You, O Most High God, are my God forever and ever." However, in the following year, Lot chose to part ways with Abram. He moved to Sodom, a city known for its great wickedness. The parting grieved Abram deeply, for he loved Lot as a son and still had no children of his own. Not long after Lot had left, the Lord spoke again to Abram. "Lift your eyes now from the place where you dwell. Look to the north, the south, the east, and the west. All the land you see, I shall give to you and your descendants forever. I will make your offspring as countless as the sands of the sea. Though the dust of the earth may be measured, your descendants will be beyond number. Arise, walk the length and breadth of this land, for I give it to you and your seed." Hearing this, Abram obeyed. He journeyed to Hebron and made it his dwelling place, trusting in the promise of the Lord. In that fateful year, Chedorlaomer, king of Elam, joined forces with Amraphel, king of Shinar, Arioch, king of Elasar, and Tidal, king of nations. Together, they unleashed their fury upon the land, striking down the king of Gomorrah and causing the king of Sodom to flee in desperation. The battlefield in the Vale of Siddim, near the Salt Sea, was littered with the fallen, many having perished from grievous wounds. The victors ransacked Sodom, Admah, and Zeboim, taking all they pleased, including Lot, Abram's nephew, along with all his possessions. They carried them away to Dan, reveling in their conquest. But one survivor escaped the carnage and made his way to Abram, bearing grim tidings. Upon hearing of Lot's capture, Abram's heart burned with righteous indignation. Without hesitation, he armed the trained men of his household, readying them for battle. Abram, the servant of the Most High, consecrated this moment as holy. He established a perpetual ordinance. 1/10 of all the first fruits would be dedicated to the Lord, an eternal decree for all generations. This tithe would sustain the priests who served before the Lord, providing them with joy and sustenance. After the victorious campaign, the king of Sodom approached Abram with reverence, bowing low and saying, "My lord Abram, grant me the lives of those you have rescued. As for the spoils, they shall be yours." Abram replied with solemn resolve, "I lift my hands to the Most High God, the creator of heaven and earth, and swear that I will take nothing from you, not even a thread or a sandal strap, lest you claim, 'I have made Abram rich.' Let only the young men keep what they have eaten, and the portion due to my allies, Anna, Eshcol, and Mamre. They may claim their rightful share, but I shall not." In the 4th year of that week, on the new moon of the 3rd month, the Lord appeared to Abram in a dream, his voice resounding like thunder. "Fear not, Abram. I am your defender, and your reward will be exceedingly great." Abram's heart was heavy as he replied, "Lord, what reward could matter when I remain childless? Eliezer of Damascus, the son of my servant, stands as my heir. You have granted me no seed." The Lord answered with unwavering assurance, "Eliezer shall not be your heir. A son born of your own flesh will inherit your legacy." Then the Lord led Abram outside, saying, "Look to the heavens and count the stars if you can. So numerous shall your descendants be." Abram gazed up at the boundless sky, awestruck by the multitude of stars. And in that moment, he believed in the Lord's promise, and it was credited to him as righteousness. The Lord continued, "I am the God who brought you out of Ur of the Chaldees to give you this land, a possession for you and your descendants forever." Abram asked, with reverence yet yearning, "Lord, how can I be sure that I will inherit it?" The Lord instructed, "Bring me a heifer, a goat, and a ram, each 3 years old, along with a turtle dove and a pigeon." Abram obeyed, gathering the animals as the Lord commanded. At the oak of Mamre near Hebron, he built an altar and sacrificed the animals, pouring their blood upon the altar. He carefully divided the carcasses, laying each piece opposite the other, but left the birds untouched. As scavenger birds descended upon the sacrifices, Abram drove them away, protecting the sacred offering. As the sun set, an overwhelming dread fell upon Abram, a darkness heavy with divine awe. Then the voice of the Lord spoke, piercing the veil of night. "Know this for certain, Abram. Your descendants will be strangers in a land not their own. They will be enslaved and afflicted for 400 years. But I will judge the nation that enslaves them, and they will emerge with great wealth. As for you, you will go to your fathers in peace and be buried at a ripe old age. In the 4th generation, your descendants will return here, for the iniquity of the Amorites has not yet reached its full measure." When Abram awoke, the sun had set completely. Before him appeared a vision, a smoking furnace and a flaming torch passing between the sacrificial pieces. On that day, the Lord established his covenant with Abram, saying, "To your descendants I will give this land, from the river of Egypt to the great Euphrates, the territory of the Kenites, the Kenizzites, the Cadmonites, the Perizzites, the Rephaim, the Amorites, the Canaanites, the Girgashites, and the Jebusites." With the covenant sealed, Abram offered the pieces, along with fruit offerings and drink offerings, upon the altar. The fire of the Lord consumed them, marking the holy pact. From that day forth, Abram observed the festival and the ordinance, dedicating it to the Lord as an everlasting covenant. Abram was filled with joy and shared everything with Sarai, his wife. His faith in the promise of a son remained steadfast, though Sarai herself had not yet borne him a child. Sarai, however, was troubled by her barrenness. Desiring to fulfill the promise, she turned to Abram and said, "My lord, take Hagar, my Egyptian maidservant, as your wife. Perhaps through her I may build a family and see the promise fulfilled." Abram, moved by Sarai's words, agreed. Sarai brought Hagar to Abram, and he took her as his wife. Hagar conceived, and in due time she bore a son. Abram named him Ishmael. This came to pass in the 5th year of that week of years, and Abram was 86 years old when Ishmael was born. In the 5th year of the 4th week of the Jubilee, during the 3rd month, and at its midpoint, Abram celebrated the feast of the first fruits of the grain harvest. He built an altar to the Lord and offered a heifer, a goat, and a sheep as burnt sacrifices, along with their grain and drink offerings, all sprinkled with the sweet aroma of frankincense. As the smoke of the offerings rose, the Lord appeared to Abram and spoke, his voice a mighty proclamation. "I am God Almighty. Walk before me with integrity and be perfect. I will establish my covenant between me and you, and will multiply you exceedingly." Overcome with awe, Abram fell prostrate before the Lord, and the Lord continued, "Behold, my covenant is with you. You shall become the father of many nations. Your name will no longer be Abram, but Abraham. For I have made you the father of multitudes. I will make you exceedingly fruitful, bringing forth nations and kings from your line. This covenant I make is eternal, binding me to you and to your descendants through all generations. I will be their God, and they will be my people. To you and your seed, I give the land where you dwell as a sojourner, the land of Canaan, as an everlasting possession. I will establish this land as their inheritance, and I will be their God. But as for you, Abraham, you must keep my covenant, as must your descendants. As a sign of this everlasting covenant, every male among you shall be circumcised." The Lord then detailed the command. On the 8th day after birth, every male must be circumcised, whether born in your house or purchased with money, even if not of your bloodline. This sign in the flesh shall be a perpetual token of my covenant. Any male who is not circumcised shall be cut off from my people, for he has broken my covenant. The Lord's gaze turned to Sarai, and he declared, "Your wife's name shall no longer be Sarai, but Sarah. I will bless her, and through her I will give you a son. Yes, I will bless her, and she shall give rise to nations, and kings will come from her." Hearing this, Abraham fell on his face again, laughing in awe and wonder as he thought to himself, "Shall a son be born to a man of 100 years? And shall Sarah, at 90, bear a child?" With reverence he spoke aloud to God, "O Lord, if only Ishmael might live under your blessing." But the Lord replied, "Yes, Ishmael will be blessed. I have heard your prayer for him. He will become the father of 12 princes and a great nation. But my covenant will be established with Isaac, whom Sarah will bear to you at this same time next year." With these words, the Lord departed, leaving Abraham awestruck. Abraham obeyed the Lord's commands without delay. He took Ishmael, along with every male born in his household and those he had purchased, and circumcised them on that very day, as God had instructed. At 99 years old, Abraham himself was circumcised, as was Ishmael, who was 13. Every male in his household bore the mark of the covenant, sealing their obedience to God's eternal ordinance. The Lord declared this law unchangeable, binding across all generations. The circumcision of the flesh on the 8th day must never be omitted. Those who neglect this sign shall not belong to my covenant people. They are destined for destruction, for they have broken my covenant. The angels of God's presence and sanctification bore witness to this decree. From the beginning of creation, God had chosen Israel to be his holy people, set apart from all nations. While other nations were given over to spirits and rulers to lead them astray, Israel alone remained under the direct authority of God. He preserved them as his treasured possession. Yet the Lord warned Abraham of the future. The children of Israel will fail to keep this covenant. Many will forsake the circumcision of their sons, abandoning the sign of my promise. Great wrath will fall upon them because they will provoke me, turning away from my law and acting like the Gentiles. Because of this rebellion, they shall be removed from the land and no longer forgiven for their transgressions. On the new moon of the 4th month, the heavenly messengers appeared to Abraham beneath the ancient oak of Mamre. Standing in the sacred shade, they spoke words of promise, declaring that Sarah, his wife, would bear him a son. Their announcement was clear and joyous, yet Sarah, overhearing their words from within the tent, laughed to herself in disbelief. When confronted, fear gripped her heart, and she denied her laughter, though the truth of it could not be hidden. The messengers, with unwavering authority, revealed the name of the promised son, saying, "His name shall be Isaac, for it is written and ordained on the heavenly tables. When we return at the appointed time, Sarah will have conceived and brought forth this child." In the same month, the Lord unleashed his righteous judgment upon Sodom, Gomorrah, Zeboim, and the entire region of the Jordan. Fire and brimstone rained down, consuming the cities and their wickedness in flames that burned without end. Their sins, perversions of flesh and defilement of the earth, were too great to bear. The destruction was absolute, leaving a testimony to the consequences of exceeding sinfulness. The Lord, however, remembered Abraham and in his mercy spared Lot, sending him away from the midst of the devastation. Yet even Lot fell into grievous error, for he and his daughters committed a sin of such disgrace as had not been seen since the days of Adam. Upon the heavenly tables, a decree was engraved to utterly remove and root out the seed of this sin, ensuring no trace of Lot's lineage would remain on the day of judgment. In that same season, Abraham journeyed from Hebron and settled between Kadesh and Shur in the mountainous lands of Gerar. By the middle of the 5th month, he moved once more and made his dwelling by the well of the oath. And in the 6th month, the Lord visited Sarah, fulfilling his promise. She conceived and, at the appointed time, in the 3rd month and at its midpoint, during the festival of the first fruits of the harvest, Sarah gave birth to a son. On that joyous day, Isaac was born, exactly as the Lord had spoken. Abraham, with reverence and obedience, circumcised Isaac on the 8th day, marking him as the first to bear the eternal sign of the covenant. This was in the 6th year of the 4th week, when the heavenly messengers returned to Abraham at the well of the oath. They witnessed the fulfillment of their words to Sarah and blessed the family with divine joy. To Abraham, they revealed the future, proclaiming, "You will not see death until you have begotten 6 more sons. But know this, though all the seed of these sons shall be reckoned among the Gentiles, it is through Isaac that your name and covenant shall endure. From him shall arise a holy seed, set apart from the nations, belonging solely to the Most High. This people will be a possession of the Lord, a kingdom of priests and a holy nation." With these declarations the messengers departed, and Abraham and Sarah rejoiced with exceeding gladness, their hearts overflowing with gratitude. Abraham, moved by this divine joy, built an altar to the Lord near the well of the oath. He offered sacrifices of thanksgiving to the one who had delivered him and fulfilled his promises. To honor the occasion, Abraham celebrated a 7-day festival of joy, becoming the first to observe the Feast of Tabernacles on the earth. He constructed booths for himself and his household, setting a sacred precedent. Each day of the festival, Abraham brought offerings to the altar: 2 oxen, 2 rams, 7 sheep, and 1 he-goat as a sin offering, seeking atonement for himself and his descendants. As a thank offering, he presented 7 rams, 7 kids, 7 sheep, and 7 he-goats, along with their grain and drink offerings. The fat of these sacrifices was burned upon the altar as a fragrant offering to the Lord, a pleasing aroma that ascended to heaven. Morning and evening, Abraham offered fragrant substances upon the altar: frankincense, galbanum, stacte, nard, myrrh, spice, and costume, each crushed and mixed in equal parts to create a pure and holy incense. For 7 days, Abraham celebrated with all his heart and soul, joined only by those in his household, for no strangers or uncircumcised were allowed in this sacred observance. Abraham blessed the Creator, exalting the one who had made him and called him to righteousness. He praised God for raising a holy seed through him, one destined to reflect the image of the Maker. This festival, he declared, was the festival of the Lord, a celebration of joy pleasing to the Most High. He honored it by taking branches of palm trees, the fruit of goodly trees, and leafy boughs, circling the altar 7 times each day, singing praises to God with unbridled thanksgiving. The heavenly messengers, watching, blessed Abraham and his descendants for all generations. They recorded the festival on the heavenly tables as an eternal ordinance for Israel. Celebrate this feast for 7 days in the 7th month, dwelling in booths, crowned with wreaths, and rejoicing before the Lord. This statute shall endure forever, binding Israel to the Lord as his chosen people. And so Abraham, the father of faith, walked with God, his life a testimony of obedience and joy in the presence of the Almighty. In the 1st year of the 5th week of this Jubilee, Isaac, my beloved son, was weaned. It was a moment of great joy and celebration for me, for I had waited so long for this day. In the 3rd month, on the very day of his weaning, I prepared a grand banquet in his honor. I called together my household, my servants, and all those who had been with me through the trials and triumphs of my life. We gathered in joy, for my heart was full, and I thanked the Lord who had blessed me with a son at last. Before me stood Ishmael, the son of my maidservant Hagar, and I could not help but smile as I watched him. This son of mine, born of a different mother, playing and dancing before me. My heart swelled with love and pride. God had not left me childless. He had given me seed, and through Isaac, my name would endure. I thanked God with all the passion of my soul, for I had seen my sons with my own eyes. But then Sarah saw Ishmael playing and rejoicing with me, and something stirred within her, a jealousy that I could not ignore. She came to me, her eyes filled with unease, and said, "Cast out this bondwoman and her son, for the son of this bondwoman shall not share in the inheritance with my son Isaac." Her words struck me like a sword, and my heart was heavy with sorrow. I looked upon Ishmael, my son, and the woman who had borne him, and I was torn. To cast them away seemed a cruel thing to do, yet I could not ignore the pain in Sarah's heart. As I stood in turmoil, wrestling with the weight of her words, the Lord spoke to me in my grief. "Do not let this thing trouble you, Abraham. Do not let your heart be weighed down with sorrow. Listen to Sarah, for in Isaac shall your name and seed be called. But as for the son of Hagar, I will make him a great nation because he is your seed." In obedience to the Lord, I rose early the next morning, my heart heavy yet resolute. I took a loaf of bread and a bottle of water, and I gave them to Hagar, placing them upon her shoulders. I sent her away with my son, my heart breaking at the thought of what I had done. She left, wandering through the wilderness of Beersheba, her heart filled with fear and uncertainty. But soon the water in the bottle was spent, and my son, weary from the journey, could not continue. His thirst overtook him, and he collapsed. Hagar, desperate and distraught, took him in her arms and placed him under the shade of an olive tree. She could not bear to watch her child die, so she moved away from him, sitting at a distance, her heart in agony. She wept bitterly, and as the tears fell from her eyes, she cried out to God, "Let me not see the death of my child." But God, in his mercy, sent one of his holy angels to her. The angel called out to her, "Why are you weeping, Hagar? Arise, take the child and hold him in your arms, for God has heard your cry and has seen the boy." At that moment Hagar opened her eyes and saw a well of water before her. With a heart overflowing with hope, she filled her bottle and gave her son a drink. She rose, and with renewed strength, she set out towards the wilderness of Paran. The boy grew, becoming strong and skilled. He became an archer, and God was with him, guiding his steps. Hagar, in time, took a wife for him from among the daughters of Egypt. He fathered a son, whom she named Nebaioth, for she said, "The Lord was near me when I called upon him." And then, in the 7th week of this Jubilee, in the 1st year of the 7th week, on the 12th day of the 1st month, there was a great voice from heaven that proclaimed, "Abraham is faithful in all that I have commanded him. He has loved the Lord with all his heart, and in every trial he has remained true." Then the prince Mastema, the accuser, came before God and said, "Abraham loves his son Isaac more than anything else. He delights in him above all things. But if he truly loves you, Lord, bid him offer Isaac as a burnt offering. Command him to sacrifice his son, and we will see whether he is faithful to you in all things." The Lord, knowing the depth of my love for him and the trials I had already endured, was not shaken by this challenge. He knew that I had been tested in countless ways. I had been tested through famine, through the wealth of kings, and through the painful separation from my wife Sarah when she was taken from me. I had been tested with circumcision, with the sending away of Hagar and Ishmael, and in every trial I had remained steadfast. My soul was never impatient, my heart never slow to act. I had trusted in God with all my being, and he knew that I loved him above all else. The voice of the Lord called out, "Abraham, Abraham." With reverence and trembling, Abraham answered, "Here I am." Then the Lord spoke again, saying, "Take your beloved son, the one you love, Isaac, and go to the highlands. There, on a mountain I will show you, offer him as a burnt offering." Early the next morning, Abraham rose and prepared for the journey. He saddled his donkey and took 2 of his young servants and Isaac, his son. He split the wood for the burnt offering and set out toward the place the Lord had spoken of. For 3 days they traveled, their steps heavy with purpose. At last Abraham looked up and saw the mountain from a distance. When they arrived near a well of water at the mountain's base, Abraham turned to the young men and said, "Stay here with the donkey. The boy and I will go ahead to worship, and after that we will return to you." He then placed the wood for the burnt offering on Isaac's back, while he himself carried the fire and the knife. Together, father and son ascended the mountain in silence. As they climbed, Isaac broke the quiet, his voice filled with curiosity. "Father?" he called. Abraham replied, "Here I am, my son." Isaac continued, "We have the fire and the wood, but where is the lamb for the burnt offering?" Abraham answered with steady resolve, "God will provide for himself a lamb for the burnt offering, my son." They walked on together, approaching the sacred place the Lord had designated. Upon reaching the summit, Abraham built an altar, carefully arranging the wood upon it. Then, with profound anguish yet unwavering faith, he bound Isaac and laid him atop the wood on the altar. With the knife in his hand, he stretched forth his arm, prepared to carry out the command of the Almighty. At that moment, a voice rang out from heaven calling, "Abraham, Abraham!" Startled, Abraham paused and responded, "Here I am." The voice continued, "Do not lay a hand on the boy. Do not harm him in any way. For now I know that you fear the Lord, because you have not withheld your son, your only son, from me." Abraham lifted his eyes, and there, caught by its horns in a thicket, was a ram. He went to the ram, took it, and offered it as a burnt offering in place of his son. Overwhelmed with gratitude, Abraham named that place, "The Lord Will Provide," a name that would endure through the generations, for on the mountain of the Lord, provision had been made. The Lord's voice came again from heaven, saying, "By myself I have sworn, declares the Lord, because you have done this, and not withheld your son, your beloved son, I will surely bless you. I will multiply your descendants like the stars in the heavens, and like the grains of sand on the seashore. Your offspring will possess the gates of their enemies, and through your seed all the nations of the earth will be blessed, because you have obeyed my voice. Go now in peace." Abraham and Isaac descended the mountain, their hearts full of reverence. They returned to the young men who had waited faithfully, and together they journeyed back to Beersheba, where Abraham made his home by the well of the oath. Each year thereafter, Abraham celebrated a 7-day festival in remembrance of this event, filled with joy and gratitude for the Lord's mercy and provision. It became a tradition written on the heavenly tablets, a lasting commandment for the descendants of Israel to observe with joy for all generations to come. In the first year of the first week of the 42nd Jubilee, Abraham returned and settled near Hebron, in a place known as Kirjath Arba, where he dwelt for 2 weeks of years. In the first year of the third week of this Jubilee, the days of Sarah's life were fulfilled, and she passed away in Hebron. Abraham, heart heavy with sorrow, went to mourn for her and to bury her. And in that moment, the Lord tested Abraham's spirit to see whether he would become impatient or speak rashly. Yet Abraham remained patient and unshaken, his heart steady even in grief. With grace and a humble spirit, he spoke to the children of Heth, seeking a place to bury his beloved wife. And the Lord, in his mercy, granted Abraham favor in the sight of all who beheld him. With gentle words, Abraham requested a burial site, and the sons of Heth offered him the land of the double cave near Mamre, which is Hebron, for the price of 400 pieces of silver. They insisted, "Take it for nothing, good sir," but Abraham refused. He would not take the land without paying the full price, for he knew the value of the land was great. With dignity, he offered the silver, bowed twice before them, and with reverence, he buried Sarah in the double cave, as the Lord had provided. Sarah's life spanned 127 years, 2 jubilees, 4 weeks and 1 year. These were the days of Sarah's life, a woman of great faith and honor. This was the 10th trial Abraham faced, and once again he proved faithful, patient in spirit, and steadfast in his devotion. Though rumors had spread in the land about God's promise to give Abraham and his seed the land as an inheritance, he did not let such matters trouble his heart. He asked only for a place to lay his dead to rest, showing that his faith in God was unshakable. He was, as the scriptures say, the friend of God, and his name was written in the heavenly records. In the 4th year of the Jubilee, Abraham sought a wife for his son Isaac. Her name was Rebekah, the daughter of Bethuel, son of Nahor, Abraham's brother. Rebekah was also the sister of Laban. Abraham, still full of life, took a third wife named Keturah, a woman from among his household servants. Hagar, whom he had once taken as a wife, had passed away before Sarah. Keturah bore Abraham 6 sons, Zimram, Jokshan, Medan, Midian, Ishbak, and Shua, all within 2 weeks of years. In the 6th week, in the 2nd year of that week, Rebekah gave birth to twin sons, Jacob and Esau. Jacob was gentle and upright, while Esau was a wild and untamed man, a hunter, fierce in his ways. Jacob, in contrast, preferred the quiet of the tents. As the boys grew, Jacob was taught the ways of writing, but Esau, devoted to the wilderness, was not. Esau learned the arts of war, and all his deeds were fierce. Abraham, seeing the ways of both sons, loved Jacob, while Isaac's heart was drawn to Esau. Abraham, knowing that God had chosen Jacob to be the bearer of his promise, called Rebekah to him and shared his wisdom. He knew she loved Jacob deeply, far more than Esau, and so he instructed her with great care. He said to her, "My daughter, watch over Jacob, for he will carry my legacy upon the earth. He shall be a blessing to all the children of men, and the glory of the whole seed of Shem. I know the Lord will choose him above all the peoples of the earth to be a possession for himself." Isaac, my son, loves Esau more than Jacob. But I see that your heart belongs to Jacob, and that is good. Show him even more kindness, and keep your eyes upon him in love, for he will be a blessing to us, bringing joy to the earth for all generations to come. Let your hands be strong, and let your heart rejoice in your son Jacob, for I have loved him far beyond all my sons. His descendants will be blessed forever, and his seed will fill the earth. If a man can count the grains of sand upon the shore, then so too will his descendants be numbered. And Abraham, filled with solemnity, spoke to Jacob, his beloved son, and in the sight of Rebekah, his devoted wife, he kissed him tenderly. With a voice full of blessing, he declared, "Jacob, my son, whom my soul loves beyond measure, may the Almighty bless you from above the heavens, and may he bestow upon you all the blessings he granted to Adam, to Enoch, to Noah, and to Shem. May all the promises God made to me be fulfilled through you and your descendants, enduring for all generations, as long as the heavens are above the earth. And may no evil spirit, no force of Mastema, ever rule over you or your seed, turning you away from the Lord, who is your God, now and forever. May the Lord be your father, and you be his firstborn son, a light unto the people of the earth. Go in peace, my son." With these final words of love and blessing, Abraham and Jacob both departed, their hearts filled with the weight of the sacred covenant. Rebekah, with a mother's heart, loved Jacob dearly, more deeply than she ever loved Esau. But Isaac, in contrast, loved Esau, his firstborn, with a devotion that far exceeded his affection for Jacob. And in the 42nd Jubilee, in the first year of the 7th week, Abraham called upon Ishmael, the 12 sons he had with Hagar, Isaac with his 2 sons, and the 6 sons born to Keturah, along with their children. Abraham, seeing the generations gathered before him, commanded them all to follow the way of the Lord. He urged them to walk in righteousness, to love one another, and to uphold justice and integrity in all their dealings with mankind. He instructed them to circumcise their sons as a sign of the covenant God had made with them, and to remain steadfast in the path that the Lord had set before them, never straying to the right or to the left. Abraham warned them, "Keep yourselves pure. Do not indulge in fornication or uncleanness. Renounce such wickedness from among you. If any woman or maid commits fornication, burn her with fire, for such acts bring great shame. Do not allow your hearts and eyes to follow after such things, nor marry from the daughters of Canaan, for their seed will be rooted out of the land." He continued, "Remember the judgment that befell the giants and the Sodomites. Their wickedness led them to ruin, destroyed by fire because of their vile acts of fornication and corruption. Do not follow in their footsteps, for their end is an example of what becomes of those who defy the Lord." Abraham's voice grew more urgent as he implored them, "Guard yourselves from all forms of sin and impurity. Do not let your name become a curse. nor let your life be a reproach to the earth. Do not allow your sons to fall by the sword, nor let your family be accursed like the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah. I plead with you, my sons, love the God of heaven. Hold fast to his commandments. Do not follow idols, nor be ensnared by the uncleanness of those who worship false gods. Do not make for yourselves idols, whether molten or carved, for they are empty and have no spirit. Those who place their trust in them trust in nothing. Abraham's voice was filled with deep passion and righteousness as he commanded them. Serve the Most High God and worship him alone. Let your hearts always be turned towards him and walk in his ways. If you do this, he will bless you with mercy, sending rain upon your land, blessing your work and your home, and prospering the fruit of your womb and the yield of your land. The herds of your cattle and the flocks of your sheep will increase, and you will be a blessing to all the nations of the earth. The nations will look upon you with favor, and they will bless your sons in my name, that they may inherit the blessings I have received. Abraham, moved by a father's love and by the weight of God's covenant, gave gifts to Ishmael, to the sons of Keturah, and to all his descendants. Yet he gave everything to Isaac, his true heir, entrusting him with the fullness of the promise that had been made to him. And so it was that Ishmael and his sons, along with the sons of Keturah and their progeny, journeyed forth together, spreading across the land from Paran to the entrance of Babylon, settling in all the vast regions that lay toward the east, where the desert winds whispered their ancient secrets. These diverse peoples, born of different unions but bound by shared bloodlines, mingled among themselves, forging bonds and creating new communities, and they became known by a single name: Arabs and Ishmaelites. In the 6th year of the 7th week of this Jubilee, which marked the year 2057 since the creation of Adam, Abraham, now aged and feeling the weight of his years, called his beloved son Isaac before him. With a heavy heart, knowing his days on earth were drawing to a close, he spoke these words: I have grown old, my son, and the day of my death is unknown to me. My days are filled, and I have lived them in the service of the Lord, striving with all my heart to follow his will. Throughout my life I have kept him in remembrance, seeking to walk uprightly in all his ways. My soul has rejected the idols of the world, and I have despised those who serve them. My heart and spirit have been wholly devoted to doing the will of him who created me. For he is the living God, holy and faithful, righteous beyond all others. With him there is no partiality, nor does he accept gifts. His justice is perfect, and he brings judgment upon all who break his commandments and scorn his covenant. Therefore, my son, hold fast to his commandments, his laws, and his judgments. Do not walk in the path of wickedness, nor follow the abominations of graven or molten images. Let your heart be pure, and your actions righteous in the sight of the Lord. And let this command be clear: do not eat the blood of any animal, nor any bird that flies in the heavens. If you offer a peace offering, let the blood be poured out upon the altar, and let all the fat be offered with fine flour, mingled with oil, along with a drink offering. These offerings are a sweet-smelling savor to the Lord. Offer the fat of thank offerings upon the altar fire, its belly fat, the fat on the inward parts, the 2 kidneys, and the fat upon them, and on the loins and liver. These must all be offered up as a sweet fragrance to the Lord. The meat shall be eaten that day and the next, but it must not be kept until the 3rd day, for it is not acceptable then, and whoever eats it will bear guilt. Sprinkle salt upon every offering, for the salt of the covenant must not be lacking in any of your sacrifices before the Lord. As for the wood used for sacrifices, do not use any wood other than those I have named: cypress, pine, fir, cedar, palm, olive, myrrh, laurel, citron, juniper, and balsam. These trees have been tested, and their fragrance ascends to heaven. Do not use wood that is old, split, or darkened, for its scent has faded, and it will not bring the sweet fragrance the Lord desires. Take heed, my son, and obey these commands. Be pure in your body, washing yourself with water before you approach the altar. Wash your hands and feet, and after the offering, cleanse yourself once more. Let no blood remain upon you or upon your garments. Guard yourself, my son, against blood, for it is sacred and must be treated with utmost care. Do not partake in the blood of man, for it is the soul. If you shed the blood of man, the earth will cry out, and it cannot be cleansed except by the blood of the one who has committed such a sin. Do not take a gift or bribe for the blood of man, for it is the blood of the innocent that defiles the land. Justice must be served, and in this the Lord will protect the righteous. I see, my son, that the works of mankind are filled with sin and wickedness, and their deeds are an abomination. They are unclean, and their hearts are far from righteousness. Be wary, my son, and do not follow their path. For if you do, the Lord will hide his face from you and turn you over to your own transgressions. He will cast you out of the land, and your name and the name of your seed will be forgotten from the earth. But if you turn away from all their wicked ways, if you live in obedience to the will of the Most High, then he will bless you in all that you do. He will raise up from you a plant of righteousness that will endure throughout the generations. Your name and mine will be remembered forever in the heavens. Go, my son, in peace. May the Most High God, my God and your God, strengthen you to walk in his ways, and may he bless all your seed and the seed of your seed for generations to come. May you be a blessing to the earth. And with those words, Isaac went out, his heart full of peace and joy, knowing the weight of his father's blessing upon him. In the second year of the 44th Jubilee, during the first week, when Abraham's life was drawing to a close, Isaac and Ishmael journeyed from the well of the oath to celebrate the Feast of Weeks, the festival of the first fruits of the harvest, with their father. Abraham, who had longed for this moment, rejoiced at the sight of his two beloved sons together. Isaac, whose wealth and possessions were vast in Beersheba, often made journeys to inspect his holdings, only to return to his father's side. During one such visit, Ishmael also came to see his father. The two sons arrived together, and Isaac, ever faithful, offered a sacrifice on the altar that his father had built in Hebron. The smoke of the sacrifice rose as Isaac gave a thank offering, preparing a joyous feast before Ishmael, his brother. Rebekah, Isaac's wife, took the first fruits of the land, freshly harvested grain, and baked new cakes. She entrusted Jacob, her son, to carry them to Abraham, that he might eat and bless the Creator of all things before he passed from this world. Isaac, too, sent a special thank offering with Jacob, hoping his father would partake and be blessed once more. Abraham, now nearing the end of his days, sat before the offerings and partook of the food and drink provided. He lifted his eyes to the heavens and blessed the Most High God, Creator of heaven and earth, the giver of all the good things upon the earth, and the one who nourishes mankind so they might bless his name. O Lord, my God, Abraham declared, his voice filled with gratitude, I give thanks unto you, for you have granted me to see this day. I am now 175 years old, an old man full of days. All my days have been filled with peace. The sword of my adversaries has never overpowered me, and you have been with me all the days of my life, guarding me and my children. Your mercy and your peace, O God, be upon me and my descendants. May they be a chosen nation, a holy inheritance, set apart from all the nations of the earth, from generation to generation. Then, calling for Jacob to come near, Abraham looked upon his grandson with eyes full of love and blessing. "My son Jacob," Abraham said, his voice soft but strong, "may the God of all creation bless you, strengthen you to walk in righteousness, and guide you to do his will. May he choose you and your seed, that you may become a people set apart for his inheritance forever. Come close, my son, and kiss me." Jacob, moved by his grandfather's words, drew near and kissed Abraham, his heart swelling with love. Abraham's eyes shone as he spoke again, his voice full of authority and compassion. "Blessed be you, my son Jacob, and all the children of the Most High God. May God give you a righteous seed, and may some of your descendants be sanctified in the midst of the earth. May the nations serve you, and may all people bow before your descendants. Be strong, my son, and rule over all the descendants of Seth. Then your ways and the ways of your children will be justified, and you will be a holy nation, a nation that is set apart. May the blessings of the Most High God rest upon you, the blessings he gave to Noah and to Adam, that they may remain upon the head of your seed for generations without end. May he cleanse you from all impurity and forgive you for all your transgressions. May he strengthen you, bless you, and grant you the inheritance of the earth. May he renew his covenant with you, and may you be his people forever, as he is your God, forever and always. Remember my words, my son Jacob," Abraham continued with deep wisdom. "Follow the commandments of your father Abraham. Separate yourself from the nations. Do not eat with them, and do not follow their works. Do not associate with them, for their ways are unclean, polluted, and abominable in the eyes of the Lord. They sacrifice to the dead and worship evil spirits. They eat over graves, and their works are vanity. They do not understand, nor do they see the error of their ways. They bow down to pieces of wood and to stones, calling them gods, yet they have no heart. Be cautious, my son Jacob, and avoid their error. May the Most High God protect you from their uncleanness and their lies. May he deliver you from their path and keep you from their destruction. Do not take a wife from the daughters of Canaan, for their seed will be rooted out from the earth. Canaan's descendants will perish because of the transgression of Ham, and none of his line will be saved on the day of judgment. As for idolaters and the profane, there will be no hope for them in the land of the living. They will descend into Sheol, the place of condemnation, and there will be no remembrance of them. Just as the children of Sodom were taken from the earth, so will all idolaters be cast away. Do not fear, my son Jacob, nor be dismayed. The Most High God will preserve you from destruction. He will guard you from the paths of error and keep you from harm. This house I have built, the house of Abraham, will stand forever. It is yours and your descendants' inheritance for all generations. Through you, my son, will my name be established before God forever." And with these final words, Abraham ceased his blessing and commands. Jacob lay beside him that night, his heart filled with love and joy. He rested in the embrace of his grandfather, receiving the fullness of his affection. Abraham kissed him 7 times, his heart swelling with pride and tenderness for the son of his beloved Isaac. "The Most High God, the Creator of all," Abraham whispered, "who brought me from Ur of the Chaldees and gave me this land as an everlasting inheritance, I bless him forever. Blessed be the Lord who has given me the grace to see this day." Abraham, his voice full of warmth, spoke again. "My son, whom I love with all my heart, may the grace and mercy of the Most High God rest upon you and your descendants forever. Never forsake them, O Lord, and let your eyes remain open to them, that they may be preserved, blessed, and sanctified as your holy people. May your covenant and your grace be upon them for all generations." And Abraham, in his final moments, gently placed 2 of Jacob's fingers upon his eyes. He then lifted his voice in a quiet blessing to the God of gods, before covering his face, stretching out his feet, and peacefully surrendering to the eternal rest of death. His soul was gathered to join his ancestors, leaving this world behind. Meanwhile, Jacob remained nestled in his grandfather's embrace, unaware that Abraham had already passed into eternity. But when Jacob eventually awoke from his sleep, a cold, lifeless stillness gripped him. He gazed upon Abraham's form, now as cold as stone, and called out in panic, "Father, Father." But no response came, and in the heavy silence, Jacob realized the dreadful truth. His grandfather was gone. Rushing from his place beside Abraham, Jacob ran swiftly to his mother Rebekah and told her of the tragedy. In turn, Rebekah went to Isaac in the night, and together they hastened to the place where Abraham lay. Jacob carried a lamp in his hand, and as they entered, they found Abraham's body, still and lifeless, confirming that the great patriarch had indeed departed. Overcome with grief, Isaac fell to the lifeless form of his father. His heart broke, and with tears flowing freely, he kissed Abraham's cold face. A mournful sound filled the house of Abraham as Ishmael, his son, arose and joined his brothers in sorrow. Weeping bitterly, he mourned the loss of his father, and all those who loved Abraham joined in the great lamentation. Isaac and Ishmael, with their sons, carried Abraham to the double cave, near Sarah, his beloved wife, and laid him to rest. For 40 long days they mourned together, a great weeping rising from the household, a testament to the love and reverence they held for their father. At last, the days of mourning were concluded. Abraham had lived 3 jubilees and 4 weeks of years, 175 years, his days full and complete, a life spent in faith, wisdom, and strength. He was old, yet full of days. For the forefathers, life had once stretched across 19 jubilees. But after the great flood, human life began to shorten, and generations grew old with alarming swiftness. Their days became filled with sorrow, trials, and the stain of wickedness. But Abraham had been different. In his righteous ways, he had lived a life pleasing to the Lord, walking in holiness and truth. And yet even he did not complete 4 full jubilees before his days were filled to the brim, and he departed from the earth, his work done. And from that time onward, the generations to come would find their lives slipping away quicker than ever before. No longer would a man live even 2 jubilees. Knowledge would fade from their minds, and understanding would vanish with the passing of years. Those who lived to see even 1.5 jubilees would be seen as having lived long lives, but their days would be marked by pain and sorrow, and peace would be a stranger to them. For calamity would follow calamity, wound after wound, tribulation after tribulation. Evil tidings, sickness and suffering would besiege them. They would know no respite, as death and destruction stalked the earth. The world would be a place of chaos and ruin, as disease, hunger, and war ravaged the generations. And all of this would befall a generation whose works were filthy, whose lives were steeped in uncleanness, fornication, and pollution. They would live in the defilement of their own making. And they would look back at the days of the forefathers and say, "The days of old were many and full of peace. But behold, our days are few and filled with trouble. Our lives stretch no more than 70 years, or 80 if we are strong, but even then, they are filled with bitterness." In that generation, the sons would accuse their fathers, and the elders would be held accountable for their unrighteousness. They would call out the wickedness of their speech, their actions, and their rebellion against the covenant that God had made with them. They had forsaken his commandments, his feasts, his months, his Sabbaths, and his jubilees. The words of the Lord would be forgotten, and his laws would be cast aside. The earth itself would be defiled by the wickedness of men, The vineyards would wither, the olive trees would fail, and all creation would groan under the weight of humanity's corruption. The beasts, the cattle, the birds, and the fish would perish, their lives snuffed out by the wickedness of mankind. In their blindness, they would fight one another, young against old, poor against rich, lowly against great, beggar against prince. Their quarrels would center around the law and the covenant, but they had long since forgotten what it meant to walk in the ways of the Lord. They would turn to violence, to swords and bows, seeking to restore the lost path, but their blood would be shed in vain, for their hearts would not turn back to righteousness, and those who survived would not find peace. They would rise up in deceit and greed, seeking to take all that was their neighbor's, and defile the holy things with their wickedness. The name of the Lord would be misused, and his holiness would be profaned by their actions. In the fullness of time, a great punishment would befall the evil generation. The Lord would raise up the sinners of the Gentiles, merciless and without compassion. They would show no regard for the old or the young, for the weak or the strong. They would bring violence upon Israel and transgression against Jacob. The earth would be soaked with blood, and no one would be left to bury the dead. In those dark days, the people would cry out, calling upon the Lord for salvation, but no one would come to their aid. The wrath of God would be upon them, and their cries would go unanswered. The heads of the children would be white with age, and even a newborn would appear as ancient as one who had lived 100 years. Tribulation and oppression would break their bodies, and their once vibrant lives would be destroyed. But then, a new light will emerge. In those dark times, the children will begin to seek wisdom, yearning for the laws that have been long forgotten. They will seek the commandments with fervor, turning their hearts back to the path of righteousness, striving to reclaim what was lost. And as the days stretch on, they will grow in number. Their years will increase, and the generations of men will begin to live longer lives. The span of a man's days will reach near 1,000 years, surpassing the length of life once known to their ancestors. In those days, there will be no old man, nor anyone who feels unsatisfied with the days they've been given. All will be as children, filled with the vitality and joy of youth. Their days will be full, their hearts light, and their lives peaceful. There will be no evil among them, no Satan to lead them astray, nor any destroyer to bring them harm. For their days will be blessed, full of healing, joy, and endless peace. In that blessed time, the Lord will pour out his healing upon his servants. They will rise from their suffering, strong and restored, and they will see the peace of the Lord descend upon them. Their enemies will be driven away, and the righteous will look upon their deliverance with hearts full of gratitude and eternal joy. They will witness the judgment of the wicked and rejoice as their enemies' curses fall upon them, and their bones will rest in the earth, their spirits filled with boundless joy, for they will know with certainty that it is the Lord who has executed judgment, showing mercy to countless generations who love him. So Moses, record these words, write them down, for they are inscribed in the heavenly tablets as a testimony for all generations to come. End of movie 2. Watch the first movie to see the sacred history of creation revealed to Moses on Mount Sinai. If you like this video, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss more movies like this. Keep your minds open, and until we meet again,